Hello, everyone, and welcome to another F.L.O.W Presents. So today we talking about the juicy stuff. We talking about love and money. So before we get started, we have some awesome panelists with us today. So I'm just gonna have them introduce themselves. As you can see, the dynamic is a little bit different. We have two married couples. I said, what am I saying? Two married couples and two single people. So I'm gonna start with Miriam and Thade. You guys can introduce yourselves.
Thanks, Monique, for that introduction. My name is Tare.
And I'm Miriam. And we've been married for 5 years coming up in October. And yeah, that's just a little bit about us.
Thank you for that. So we're gonna go down to our next married couple. Can you guys introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Ashwathi,
I'm Brandon.
and we've been married for 3 years now.
Thank you for that. So now we're gonna move over to the single side. Deidre, can you introduce yourself a little bit?
My name is Deirdre. I don't know what else to say.
I don't know what's
I'm one
happening.
of the single people.
Hold on one second. We're getting some info from our production team.
And Alex is not picking up. It's sound in general. I'm not getting it even on here. You're good to go, Monique.
Okay, just because I don't know what everyone heard, we're just gonna do that all over again. All right, so we're gonna start with the married couples again. So Miriam and Thade, take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name is Miriam.
My name is Tare.
And we've been married 4 years, going on 5 in October.
Thank you. And then Ashwathi and Brandon.
My name is Brandon Trammell.
And I'm Ashwathi Trammell, and we've been married for 3 years. And we are also interracial couple as well.
Nice. Thank you guys. Taking over to Deidre.
My name is Deirdre.
And then lastly, Tosin.
My name is Tosin. I don't know what else to add. I was gonna get into like career and everything I had going on, but we're just gonna keep it simple because everybody's keeping it simple. So
All right, that's fine. All right, so today, before we get into our discussion, just gonna throw out some disclaimers today. We will be having our overflow once again. We are going to be providing a link in the chat so that if you want to jump in, you can definitely jump in with us later. Also, please, if you haven't done it already, press the button that says subscribe and then move over and press the like button. And then when you're done with that, share it with your friends. All right, so let's get into it. So the first question that I have for everyone, anyone can answer this question, is how does money affect relationships, or how can it affect relationships? That's a very broad, vague question for a reason. So anyone can take that away. And remember to unmute yourselves. I see.
So you said, how does money affect relationships, or how can it?
Yes.
I would say in a great way. It depends on the perspective of the male and female going into it. If they're used to a certain lifestyle, let's say the male is, or the female is, and the guy is from humble means, when they go on their first date and he takes it to like somewhere cheap, it might it might change her perspective on the relationship or the guy, depending on where she is in life. And so, that money adds a comfort. It shouldn't be based, the whole relationship shouldn't be based on it, but they have to, it can be very stressful if you have limited resources in the pocket.
Right.
And on the opposing side, when you come together in a relationship or marriage, I should say, you're bringing two funds together. So now you can afford more. You can have maybe you can actually maybe afford a house when you couldn't before, or just things like that drastically can change. But you really have to communicate about finances, because that it's very well known that that's really a point of contention for a lot of couples. So just you really need to be outright and say what the situation is before you get married, or maybe even during counseling or something, maybe prior to that.
Thank you for that. We're gonna definitely touch on when we should start talking about finances. I feel like Miriam, you were about to jump right there. I felt it.
Yeah, I was gonna agree. I was gonna agree with the couple below, and I just want to say also that it could either be a great point of contention, or it could be a place where you win. And so when it comes to money, and so communication is really, really big. And also when it comes to money and relationships, you're two different people coming from two different lifestyles, coming from two different households, two different ways of spending money or thinking about money. And so now you have to kind of marry those things together as well.
Thank you for that. I want to take it over to some of the singles on the call. What did you think about that? And just a disclaimer, this is not only money with your significant other. This could also be in families, with friends, with whatever relationship you're in. So it's a very broad question for a reason.
Yeah. I would just say, I think when it comes to money and relationships, there's, I think, a mindset when it comes to other people. I think when people share similar mindsets, there's not as much issues, but you kind of think of even friends, like if you have the same perspective on what's important, whether it's fashion, whether it's traveling, you have no issues in terms of finances, likely if you guys are on the same page. But when there's conflict, when there's disagreements of like what's important, I think that's where tension may rise with money. And I think habits is probably the other thing, like the habits that you display financially kind of say a lot about somebody. You can kind of tell, sometimes you can tell how someone is based on like what they spend their money on, just like their time. So I think if you're able to have a good understanding of your finances and another person's finances, you can kind of see where you guys align on a lot of other things other than money. So.
Right. Deidre, did you have anything to add, or? Okay, so I kind of asked this question on the last panel, but I think it's important for this discussion as well. So I kind of want to ask everyone, where did you get your financial knowledge, inspiration, like how you deal with money? Where did you get that from? Where did that come from? So we're gonna start with Deidre, since you didn't say anything before. We're gonna start with you.
I don't know. Rich. We grew up in adventure school, so things were always tight. Bills were always due. So it was always, you were watching how your parents spent money. The bills and the things of most importance got paid first, tuition. And then just as I was growing up, I started learning the importance of saving. And this was like mainly after college, So even with student loans, trying to pay stuff off, it was just like after a while you realize what's important, and that's where your money goes.
So basically, your parents kind of framed that for you, is what I'm kind of hearing, right? All right. So Tosin, what do you think? Where did you get your money inspiration from?
In terms of money inspiration, I would just say seeing other people, like what they spent their money on, like whether it was friends or family. I saw like houses and cars and other things that I saw people attain. That's where I thought, okay, that's what money should be spent on. But growing up, there weren't really many discussions on finances that would have probably been helpful at an early age. And I don't really fault like my parents. I think that's pretty widespread. I feel like a lot of times the conversations that we have about money aren't the conversations we need to have like long-term wealth or things that are more sustainable for the long term. And I just think that's just a consistent thing you see. But for me, I'd say just early on seeing what other people were doing, and now I've just tried to read books and hang around people that seem like they got it right. Just keep myself around the right company and just keep searching and learning about finances. That's pretty much what's helped me get here now.
So what you're saying is you hang out with rich people. Okay.
I don't know. The people that don't act rich are usually the rich people. So I don't know.
Okay, thank you for that. Ashwati and Brandon, where did you individually get your money inspiration from?
As I mentioned before, we're an interracial couple. So I was born in India, and I moved here when I was about 2 years old. So my parents, they had to work like hard labor jobs growing up. So they were definitely penny pinching and budgeting themselves and clipping coupons. So that's mainly where most of my idea of money and how to use it and whatnot came from. But so for me, I had more of a conservative, like saving mindset. And so later on in life, I needed to allow like other people to influence me because I was so conservative with money, to the point where I wasn't enjoying the money or enjoying my life, because I was like, oh, I shouldn't go there because I should just save this money. So I had to like let go a little bit and enjoy life by spending money.
Okay.
I'll just say my father. My father took care of all the finances. My parents used to call me a squirrel because I just would save and save and save. So, they showed me what it would take to attain a certain level of lifestyle. So we're from PG County. PG County is one of the most affluent, if not the most affluent, Black communities, counties in the world. And if you want to live in this area, you pretty much gotta, you gotta make a certain amount of money if you want to live a certain lifestyle. So that's what I wanted to get. So they said you have to get your education, follow this pattern, and I just try to stick to it.
So I'm curious, you both sound like you came from pretty like conservative money homes or backgrounds, right? And Ashwati, you're kind of saying that kind of changed, you let go a little bit. What about you, Brandon? Did you ever take a shopping spree? Did you?
I'm very cheap when it comes to certain things, but I also spend on the luxuries. So it's like I skimp out where I can so I can throw all my money into one specific thing or two specific things that'll last. Yeah.
Okay. We're going to touch on how that was like coming together. And Miriam and Thade, how about you guys?
So I guess Tari and I are in an intercultural relationship. We're both Black, but he's Hispanic and my family's from Kenya. And so I came from I'm first generation. I came from parents who were immigrants, and they struggled when they first got here, very much so. And so I saw that. And even as we were growing up, I saw like how my mom would like write checks for us to be able to get food for school, and like how stressful sometimes money was. And so it made me really like a saver. I was a saver, and just like Ashwati, I was holding on to every penny. But Thade, what were you?
I'm the same first generation kid, but growing up, whatever I saw was really just people budgeting at a dinner table, figuring out all these pieces of papers, of bills, and every time you'd ask for something is, I don't got nothing. I know you got money because you working, so don't tell me no. But they were really strict on, no, we don't have any money to get this and that. but it was to have a better path later on in life. So even coming into this relationship, I didn't, even though I saw it, I never practiced it. I'm more of the spender. I have no problem. Well, I do, but I don't.
Okay, so now I'm going to direct this question to the single people on the call, and then I want the married couples to like think about if you had these same sentiments or if this changed when you guys got married. So for the single people, I'm going to start with Tosin. When you think about entering a relationship, like even now, if you have a significant other, like how do you think your finances would come together? Like, do you think you would have a joint bank account? Do you think what's hers is hers, what's mine is mine, and we're gonna make it work? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Or have you even thought about that? Like, that's a better question too.
Yeah. I've had the mindset that accounts should be joint. I've thought about it. I read like different books, heard different opinions about it. My thought is that um, when you bring resources together, you're able to think of things and account for things in a better fashion. And I just think of an example might be if you had someone to take care of, you know, a family member, spouse, having both of your resources and considering about, you know, taking care of that person might be better than just one person thinking about it. I mean, you come together on finances, you're able to talk about those things. You're able to build a relationship based on decision making, which I think is good. I think it could be a challenge for some people. I think having a joint account and then a separate account might be a safe play. Like you know, most of the funds come in the joint, and then having a separate like spend. You know, because some people don't like to be asked questions about where they're spending things. I think that's that's probably a safe way for most people. But I'm ideal for the joint account. That's just my thought.
Okay, so what's yours is hers.
Basically, yeah. That's all it should be. But
Remember that. Remember you said that.
yeah.
Deidre, what about you? What are your thoughts?
I'm more for having one joint account and you having your separate account. Um, I'm not saying my money is my money, but I don't. If we talk and we say a portion of our both of our checks are, you know, regardless of who makes more, goes into a joint account, I think that's okay because you have joint responsibility. But if you want to, if you have a project that you want to work on, I want you to be able, I want him to be able to have that source for himself. Because if I want to go shopping and he takes my money, you know, it's going to be like, where did my money go? Why am I, you know, it could turn into an argument. I mean, there's always communication and compromise, but I'm for, you know, just having a joint account, but everyone have their separate account.
Okay. And one more question for the singles too. If you guys are going on a date, so since we have a male and a female here, who is paying the bills? So Deidre, you can answer that first.
um, I'm more than willing to help. I always go for my wallet and I put it out on the table so it seems. I know I don't have to, but that's just where I am. He usually pays, which is great, and you know I never make it seem like you know, oh it's okay, you don't have to get it or you don't have it. You know, like that's just unnecessary.
Okay. And Tosin?
I would say um I would pay, but at the same time, I think it's always good to have those type of discussions too. Um, I think it's always good to have those discussions. I feel like the problem becomes we make assumptions on things in relationships. At least it's just term of my experience. We make assumptions on things. And I think the consensus would be in all situations, which again I would do in the first few dates, would be to pay. But I think once you have the discussions, and if you're honest, I think things should work. So um,
Okay, thank you for that. And just a disclaimer for our YouTube family and Facebook family watching, when I say singles, it just means that they're not married. So not that they're necessarily by themselves, just means that they're not married. Okay, now the married couples, I'm curious to know what were your thoughts when you were single dating when it came to your bank accounts first, and then how did that change when you got married, or did it change? So let's start with Miriam and Thari.
Well, so for me, my parents have separate accounts. And so I kind of thought that that's what I wanted to do as well. But, you know, the separate accounts for them, it works. They communicate about their finances in their little ways and they're able to pay the bills. So I was like, okay, I could do that too until I got married. And then I realized for Thade and I, like, we need to have a joint account because at first when we got married, we didn't have a joint account, and literally we'd be paying bills. And one day we went to Whole Foods and we went up to the cash register and we were getting ready to pay for our groceries, and basically we both looked at each other and we're like, who's paying for this time? And the conversation started being like, well, I paid for this last time, so you need to pay for this time. And we realized that we need to reconvene and talk about what we're going to do with our finances.
Okay. Who paid for it?
Well, I don't even remember. Oh, was it you? Oh, yeah.
I did. It's time to eat. I'm hungry. Wanted to eat. So kind of lost the train of thought.
What were your thoughts on joint and?
Oh, joint and single accounts. At first, I had an idea of, yeah, maybe we should do joints, but at the same time, I was like, but I've been working for X amount of time. I've been on my own for so long. I know how to, if I want to get something, I'm gonna get it. I'm not just gonna be asking questions. Hey, honey, can I get this? No, I'm about just doing me. So it took some transition and some time to get on the same page about the money. And that incident that we had at Whole Foods was a catalyst for us to think about what are we doing with our money in our marriage, and how are we going to get ahead if we just keep doing this.
Okay. It's so funny to me that I didn't remember that he paid for it. So now we're gonna go to Ashwati and Brandon. How about you guys?
Growing up, my parents had one bank account. So that's what I envisioned. And I see, like I was mentioning before, when you come together, you can definitely pool all your money together and you can afford more now and you have more of a padding and a safety net. When you have separate accounts, it's not as, it's not as big what you have in the bank account, right? Sometimes I can see how people would want separate bank accounts too. And I'm not saying this is all situations because the way Miriam and Thare mentioned too, they had their own situation where they just kind of wanted their own spending money. But I had a coworker who told me that, her husband wasn't really good with money. So he would spend and spend and spend. And so she had to take control of the finances and give him like an allocation every week or month or something. So I can see how it's beneficial to have separate bank accounts as well.
I grew up with, my parents had one bank account. And so I thought that was just how it was supposed to be. I would say I'm in charge of the finances. And so over the past few years, I heard a quote saying every dollar should be your employee. And like, so every dollar should work for you. And I won't be able to, invest properly if I don't know every dollar that comes into this household. So we have one bank account, and we're on track of each other's credit cards, so we can control the spending. And also, when we spend, we just communicate with the other person. If you're going to spend over $100 on something that you want, just notify the other person. So once you have that good communication, you're pretty good.
Thank you for that. And then, so we have a question for the singles. What is your philosophy on lending your significant other money? So if Bae comes to you like, may I have a few dollars? What are your thoughts on that? So I'm gonna start with Tosin.
Yeah. Relationship or not, I think I've come to the realization that I think there was a scripture in the Bible. My dad told me growing up, he said, whenever you give money, don't expect it back. So in other words, just give it. So if I can't give it, I'm not gonna lend it. I had a friend that I lent something to and they didn't pay me back. We're still friends, but the fact that they didn't pay me back kind of bothered me at the time. So I changed my perspective. So if I got it, you got it. But if I don't got it, I can't lend it. I just keep it that simple. That's
You a
just me.
better man than me. I was collecting with interest. What about you, Deirdre?
I don't. If it's for a significant other, I'm just like, it is what it is. I'll get it back some other way. If they're not responsible with it, that's not my responsibility. But I would hope that they would be responsible with it.
Okay. So now a question for anyone can kind of jump in and answer this. Um, when or how much did finances play into you getting into a relationship? So when you decide that you like somebody, right? And you're like, okay, I'm interested, I want to date this person. When did their finances, like for example, debt, come across your mind? When did that happen? So anyone can jump in with that one. That already looked like he had to stretch for that one.
I'll jump in. Um, yeah, I wasn't thinking about debt until I was thinking about marriage. Because at that point, I'm like, your debt doesn't matter to me until it's gonna become my debt. I think while we were dating, that's when I paid off all my student loans. So I was like debt free. But then once I proposed to her, I was like, all right, so what? How much do you have? And that's when it started to be an issue. But you know, if you love someone, you just roll with them and ride with them. And I mean, it comes with the territory.
Do you think that was too late for you to ask though, but after you proposed, or do you think like in hindsight that you would have asked beforehand?
At that point, I was already committed to her, so it wouldn't matter what number, how much she was in debt. So she could have been in debt 300,000. That it's not going to deter me from, pushing forward.
I also like I do have a significant amount of student debt. Um, but I also, I think I presented to him that I was responsible with money and that I also had a plan to pay off this student debt on my own. So I'm not looking to you for money to pay this off. So my plan was, I'm going to work in the public sector and I'm going to work for 10 years. And after I've paid it off for so long, it should be forgiven. And so that was a realistic plan for me. And like, I came to the table with that and I didn't expect him to pay for it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That's an important point, because I think the dynamic that you guys have is so interesting because Brandon, at some point you were debt free and then now you're getting into this relationship where you're adding on this debt. Look at you laughing about it. That's so interesting. And I think sometimes people will get the conception like, oh, if I tell you I have debt, it's like I want you to pay for it. And it's like, maybe that's not the case. I'm just being open and honest about where I am. So let's see, Thade, did you finish stretching with your answer?
Yeah, we're ready to go. Ready to go. So like for us in the conversation of debt, it was about the time where I had saved up $5,000 on my own, from doing the sans and susus and whatever they're called in whatever language I'll speak, and I was gonna do some repairs on my vehicle and we were dating or whatever else, and she was like, "What are you gonna do with that money?" And I'm like, "I'm gonna fix my car with it," and she's like, "But shouldn't it be ours? Shouldn't it be in our savings or whatever else?" And I'm like, "But here I slaved to save all this money," and so from there we had to flip the switch and we started to look in how can we work together, and that's when we looked up. I think it was mentioned last week with Dave Ramsey or whatnot, and that kind of set us on a better path to work together. And so we started to realize, okay, she has an X amount of money on school debt. I also have a lot of consumer debt and school debt. So how are we going to get rid of this? And right now we should be done by this year, you know.
Awesome.
What I would say is, I think it's important. We didn't talk about debt early enough, or we didn't talk about finances early enough, I think, in our relationship while we were still dating. And I think we should have, because it would have saved us a lot of headache in the long run after we got married. But I think it's important to just put things out on the table. If you're serious, if you are looking to come together and join together and be married, it's a good idea to put everything out on the table. Say, like, this is what it is. This is who I am, all of me. And you know, it gives the person the option of what they're going to do moving forward. Yeah, because Tare had like really bad spending habits when we were dating, and we kind of shied away from talking about money while we were dating. And I think if we would have had more in-depth conversations about money, it just would have saved us a lot of headache.
So just a follow-up question to that, Miriam, you said you feel like you guys didn't talk about finances or debt early enough. So when do you think is that right time?
I think definitely like when you're really serious about, you know, coming together, you know, before, maybe even before a little bit, if you think you're going to be getting engaged or walking down that path of, you know, becoming serious in that way, that you need to have that conversation, so that you can just be free. I think sometimes when you don't do that, people start to hide little parts of themselves, and that can be detrimental in the long run. So I think it's very important that you let someone know everything about you, for the most part, including your finances, so that they can make the best decision. And if they want to run, they run. If they don't, and they're like, hey, I could deal with this, they stay and they deal with it.
Yeah, I agree. Like the moment you propose, especially as a man, the moment you propose and you are starting to walk, you're already going to be planning for a wedding. So why not plan out what a budget looks like? Plan out what spending you want to do, how you want to live your life, where you want to live. Those things should already be happening from that moment, because you're going to spend nearly, maybe, depends on who, I don't know, $10,000 to $40,000 on your wedding.
Oh no, now 40,000.
We didn't spend it. Praise the Lord. But you know, you're gonna spend money regardless. So why not? If you're planning for something that big, how come you can't plan for something that you're gonna be doing day to day and living your life with somebody?
Good points. Deidre, I saw you nodding in agreement there. Do you want to add on?
I agree with most of the things that Miriam just said. Like, you know, those are important conversations that you should definitely have when you know you're serious with the person. Um, that's not something to take lightly, because like finances, I'm not married, but you know, you see finances ruin things, you know, and it's like if things aren't checked in the beginning, you know, and you just let it go, that's, you know, on you too. But that's, you know, money can ruin things, and money doesn't have to ruin things. But definitely while you're dating, once you know you're serious, that's a huge, that I agree with that.
So Tosin, does it matter to you? Like whoever you're dating, like if she tells you I have a mountain of debt or whatever the case is with finances, does that matter, or when does that come into play for you?
I think what matters the most, I think, forgive me for pronouncing the name wrong, but Aswati, apologize if I got it wrong. And I think even with Miriam, the thing is, it's not even about the amount of debt per se, more so the plan. Like, if you have a lot of debt, it's not the end of the world, but do you have a plan to pay it off? Like, are you just like leaving it be and hope that one day it's just paid out when you open your bank account, or, you know, in your federal student loan like website? Or do you have a plan? So if there's already a plan in place, it's not really an issue to me. And then guy, woman, if we come together, we could adjust the plan and see like what's the way to adjust to shoot for it to get it paid. But I think if there's no plan, that's what would be kind of discouraging. But the amount of debt wouldn't really be the issue. I think it's just the plan. So
Okay. So, oh, go ahead, Ashley.
oh, I see it. That's what.
So while you guys were talking, and you asked like when would be a good time to discuss So we did something a little unorthodox. We had counseling before we got engaged. So while we did that, we went through like 13 weeks of counseling, which I think we both enjoyed. But we talked through a lot of stuff that would bring confrontation, and finances was one of them. So if you discuss these things prior to even getting engaged, you know, you can avoid a lot of problems. Maybe they're not the right person for you to get engaged to, you know. Once you get engaged with somebody, it's out there, you know, and it's you've brought in a lot of different people into your relationship now. So I would say, you know, while you're dating, if you guys are serious, you should I recommend like doing a pre-engagement counseling, and you guys could talk through a ton of different things that you might not even think about talking about.
Thank you for that. A question that I have for our viewers watching, they may be saying like, I know I've heard people say finances can cause problems, but do you guys have any, I guess, examples or stories you want to share that's like how finances has caused problems, whether it was with a past relationship or even in the marriage or even while you were dating, if finances became a problem? Miriam, you want to answer there?
Yeah, well, I guess we kind of like answered with that Whole Food story. It was something that was kind of building up, and because we at that time had separate bank accounts, there was an underlying thing about trust with money, because in my point of view, I felt that Tare wasn't really always a good spender at the time, and you know, I always felt that I needed to save, and so we were kind of on two different thought patterns. We had two different thought patterns, two different ways of using money. And so that Whole Foods encounter like basically brought everything to the surface. And once we had that encounter, it was like, okay, listen now, we need to sit down. We need to talk about this, because we know that money is one of the biggest things that cause people to divorce in marriage. And that's not something that we want. And so we had to sit down. We, like my husband said, we looked at different options. We decided to go the Dave Ramsey route, and we've been paying off debt. He kind of alluded to the fact that we've been paying off the debt, and we should be done by the end of this year. We started with $186,000, both student loans, car loans, a whole bunch of other things. And right now, with what we have in savings, because we were in what's called storm mode due to COVID, we have like about $30,000 left. So yeah, I would just say that was our breaking point. That Whole Foods conversation was like, okay, no, we got to do something about this before it becomes a big issue.
Thank you. Does anyone else have? Actually, we're gonna invite our YouTube family to continue sharing their thoughts and questions. And right now, the chat is kind of going off because they're talking about pre-engagement counseling. So they want to know the pros and the cons of pre-engagement. Okay, Deidre she said, I'm ready. Go ahead.
Question when Asadi brought that up is, I want to know who paid for that. Did you guys both contribute to that, or it came from one person's check?
For us, it was free. We did it through the SDA church. One of our pastors was willing to do it with us, and you know, we spent about an hour every week and with him, and we talked about different topics.
Great program.
And interestingly enough, Tari and I had done something like that, similar as well. So it's really exciting to find out that there's other people that do that too.
So were there any cons, would you guys say, to doing pre-engagement counseling? Yes, Brandon.
A huge con of that is, well, because I had several friends who have done that in the past, and both sets of friends, they broke up with their girlfriends. So it will show who your other who your relationship flaws, like what they are. It will expose, the truth of, who you all are, and if you can really deal with that person, because it goes over all topics. So as soon as we got married, was they said go to as many relationship retreats, and the first one we went to, it was done at RPC, and the guy said, marriage is not for punks, and you got to be strong, and with that counseling, it brought us some arguments, promises on. So we did that and moved forward.
Okay, and so Tosin, have you ever thought of pre-engagement? I know this is probably one of the first times I've ever heard of pre-engagement counseling. So, what are your thoughts on that?
I actually did dating counseling before. I don't know if another term would be dating counseling, but I've done it before. Actually, I had a family friend pastor do it for me, and as after the counseling, it was like that was said. I mean, it puts a lot of things on the table. But I think it's good because it gets it out early. Because a lot of the things that are issues, if you get it out earlier, it won't be down the line. And you talk about being engaged and dealing with these issues, or even married, when that's the last time you should be, trying to, fall back on things. But I think it's good because you do it much earlier than much later in a relationship.
So, let me ask this question. What did that conversation look like when you asked the person, like, hey, do you want to do this pre-commitment counseling with me? Like, how did that go?
Um, I mean, it kind of went something like that. I mean, I think before you say all that, you to get to that point, you probably would know that you want to take your relationship further. So it's not like this isn't like a bad thing. This is like I want to see, before we take it any further, I want to, get some counseling done. It doesn't necessarily have to even be an issue in the relationship at the time. It could just be something that, you just want to talk through and have another party to kind of talk through a lot of the things of the future, like marriage and other things.
Okay. Another question from our YouTube family is, how much is too much financial commitment in a non-marriage relationship? So when is it too much commitment? So I'm gonna ask Deidre, like, what do you think is the line for you with finances before you get married?
I don't know. I would say if there's a child support issue, like like if the person has a child and they're trying to come after your check, like and y'all aren't like I don't know, but sticky when it gets to sticky things like that, I just like to say I don't want to be.
But so with debt, that wouldn't be an issue with you, or is debt more like when we're married, we'll deal with your debt? How do you feel about
I
that?
feel I feel like debt you can always deal with because you're responsible. Like it's not a third party responsibility. It's you and your lender. That you can handle with. And you get married, if that person decides to take on your debt, however you decide to pay that down, that's an agreement you can come to. But if there's a point where you have had the conversation and the person has not changed, then ties need to be cut.
Okay. Any married couples want to comment at least when you guys were dating, what was that financial line in the sand that it was like, not until we're married do we do this? Or was there one of those lines?
I think like married people's gifts, like a car. I wasn't gonna buy her a car even if she needed one. I wasn't gonna spend the money for all of that. Like you're technically still living at home. You'll be all right. Maybe when we get married, sure, no problem. We get the payments or whatever else. But those type of expenses, like I'm not gonna dish out $3,000 for a car for you, a used, if that, you know.
Okay.
Also being careful about, so we talked about debt and paying off debt. Like, I don't think that you should help someone pay off their debt unless you're married to them. Like, let them deal with it on their own. You know, maybe if you've talked about debt or whatever, yeah, okay, go ahead, pay off your debt. When we join together as one, okay, then we can start working together on and start knocking this out. But that's one other major thing that I.
And before we continue our conversation, I just want to also say and remind our YouTube and Facebook family that we will be having our overflow at around 6 p.m. where you guys can join us on Zoom and ask the panelists questions and just join the conversation. So please, please, please do that. So if you want to join us, please email us. You can see the email on the screen to flowpresents@gmail.com. All right, did anyone else have a answer to the question? If not, we're going to pivot a little bit to money with family. So I'll start with Towson. What, with your family, like when do you talk about finances with your family, whether it's with your parents, your cousins? Like, what is that relationship like?
I would say I do. I mean, I have an accounting background, so at times my parents and family tend to ask me questions about stuff. So whenever they seek advice, that's when I'm willing to just pour anything I can. But I find that people typically were, and this isn't to judge, but I think people typically revert to what they know, their habits, unless they come across something themselves that kind of touches them. Because I've had friends where I've sent like podcasts to and certain things, and it doesn't necessarily move them, but they may hear someone say something in a certain way, and then it just triggers them to switch. So I don't push the conversation as much. I'm there as a guide, and I'll give I give advice when I can. I never judge. I never say, oh, you shouldn't have spent your money on that, anything like that. Or I'm just there as advice, and I never try to judge because I know how it can be when you have financial situations and you try to manage money. So that's kind of how I function with family.
And to the married couples, most people, have their parents. Some people have their parents who are alive and they have to support them. So how is that on a marriage? Like, how have you guys navigated, supporting your family, your individual families, and supporting yourselves at the same time?
So we just passed 3 years in July, and as of today, we haven't had to really give out any money due to COVID, and also her brother just graduated from college this past December, and he wanted to, he's from Philadelphia, and he wanted to come to the Maryland area to look for a job. So we decided to have him stay here, and we just been helping him any way we can. But again, that could be a point of stress on a couple, on a marriage, if you had to, now budget for family members. But family's always first. You got to give it in God's hands and support one another, because now their family is your family. So you can't really look at it as, oh, their in-laws or anything like that. It's just love.
That's a good perspective. What about you guys, Miriam and Thade?
Well, thankfully, we haven't had to be in a role like that where we've had to give money to anyone at this point in time that I can think of. But I do, like, culturally, I do know that in Kenyan culture, when your parents get a little bit older, if they might need help or support, you as the son or daughter should be there to be able to help and support them because they've helped and supported you like your whole life. So that's something we look forward to doing maybe one day. But as for now, we haven't had to support anyone.
Okay. And Deidre, have you, since it seems you're in a relationship, have you thought about that? Like when you get more serious or, continuing a relationship, managing your family, helping your family out and things like that, or helping your significant other's family out? Or is that a line that you don't cross until you're married either? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that's a line that is a little fuzzy when you're dating, because depending on how cool you are with the family, somebody in his family might do something for you. So when it comes to his family, I don't have an issue doing something for him or his family, because for me, it's someone needs it, or this is coming from my heart, and that's just how it's going to be. And can you repeat the other part of the question?
I don't even remember what the other part of the question.
But the first part of the question you did ask, I do talk about finances with my family. So my sister and I, we constantly have conversations, and I think the job I have now is the first real job I have where I have benefits and everything like that. Moved to New Mexico, single. So I had to figure out my apartment. Am I spending too much? Cut back, how to save, just how things worked for me. Because, pretty much it was me that I was worried about. But once I started saving, it hurt. But now it's the most comfortable thing I ever do. This pandemic hasn't hurt me, thank God. But, savings are important. And I stress that, like, if I would have learned that in college, I'd be a little bit better off by now.
Okay, so you made me think of a question. And congratulations on getting your job and moving and adulting, because that's ill. That's gross. But congratulations on that. But I guess the other question I wanted to ask that I just thought of, in a relationship, right? Does it matter who makes more? Or how do you handle it?
No,
I
don't think so. I don't think so.
So if you make more, right, do you still expect the guy to pay for everything?
I expect him to do what he needs to do and be responsible. That's all I expect.
Okay. What about anyone else on the call? What do you guys think?
It doesn't really matter who makes more, who makes less. At the end of the day, are you guys working as a team? Do you have the same goal in mind? At one point, somebody might make more money than the other person, or you might lose money, or the person might want to stay home, or you lose a job, or how are you working through all of that? So in the gender roles of whether a man is to make more, a woman is to make more, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, are we able to live? Are we able to provide for one another? Amen. Hallelujah.
Yeah. Amen. And I wanted to add to that too. And that's why I kind of shoot for the idea of the joint account, because like you said, people's situations change. And if you're not on the same page with finances, you probably can't even ask yourself, could I take 2 years off to study abroad or go back to college, or maybe even have maybe the decision maybe to have a child or something like that. So if you guys aren't on the same page, you probably wouldn't even have that full extent idea. And if you weren't tracking that, you might have to push back some goals. So I think that's the primary reason I think the joint account makes sense.
So the next question that I have, I know I've heard, at least growing up, that in marriages or relationships, one person usually has like a stash of money like hidden away in a closet somewhere or under a mattress. So is that okay? Like, is that a thing that we should be doing? I know I don't know if it's dishonest, but I'm just curious. What are you guys' thoughts on that? Or for the single people, do you plan to do that?
Yes, I do. I'm a firm believer in, if I'm supporting you, I'm supporting you. But if something happens, I need to support myself. Growing up, I'm the youngest of 5. So I know that may not be, it's not a lot to some, but to me it was. But my siblings and my parents have always taken care of me, and I would like to do the same. But if, like I am now in the state by myself, I need to take care of me. So even before, I decide to get married, I'll have my money and we'll save together. But I believe in having a stash of money somewhere. So if something happens, you don't have to worry about it.
So the follow-up question to that, I still want the other people on the call to answer that question. But the follow-up is that stash of money known or would it be unknown? Like, will the person know that you have it? That looks like a no.
No, no, it's gonna be one of those secret things, maybe. You know, if they need help and I feel like, you know, okay, I can help you. Oh, don't worry about it. It'll get paid and they'll just, where the money come from? I don't know. Like, that's just that's just how I am. So
You said it's divine intervention. It just came to me. So what about the married couples? Not to expose y'all business, not to get nobody in trouble.
I would say I don't have extra monies on the side. I want, you know, since I'm in charge of the finances, or I mean, we both have access to the finances. It's one bank account. So I don't even see a way that she would have extra money on the side, and I would feel some type of way if I found out she had thousands of dollars on the side, and I would quickly find out, and then ask her to put it back in. Like, I just can't.
I feel some type of way when he has a couple $100 in his wallet. So I'm like, you gotta put that in the bank account.
Right. So yeah, I can't fade that.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to have money stashed away, especially if you guys are you're transparent, you're visible. You know whose checks coming in at what time. At the stroke of midnight, this check's already deposited. There's no way to be like, I'm stashing money away. The only way you can have money on the side, if hey, birthdays, Christmas, somebody want to give some cash on the side, that's on you. You can keep that, but otherwise, what's coming in is known.
What about you, Towson? Let me hear some thoughts. You gonna feel some type of way if your girl was hiding money in the closet?
Yeah, I probably would. I mean, unknowingly, it'll be like, what's this for? Where'd this come from? Because I'll be surprised. I'll be like, did you rob a bank or something? Just kidding. Like I wouldn't know what to think. I would just be surprised. That's all. I mean, I don't think I would do it. I don't think I would do it. I mean, I guess I would wonder what would be the scenario. I want to talk through the scenario. Like, what is the Armageddon that you feel like you need to have $10,000 stashed in the closet and shoe boxes or whatever you got to do? Like, what's the scenario? So I think understanding what the scenario will be could talk through the fear or the worry. But I wouldn't think to do that.
Okay. Well, you never know. You never know what may happen. She's ready to. I'm just kidding. So, something that's also going off in the YouTube chat is whether or not a couple should pay down a lease or buy a home together before they're married. Like, is that too? Oh, okay. Wow. Is that too much of a commitment? So I saw Miriam was like, mm-mm.
Yeah, no, I think that's too much for me, son. Like, no, I think that's getting too involved. If you're not married, in my opinion, I think that's getting a little too involved with finances. So you're telling me you can buy a house, but you can't walk down the aisle? That's just my question.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
I want to say, me stashing money aside, it would be good in this situation. Because if I buy a house with somebody or buy a lease or do whatever with somebody and something happened and we break up, what am I falling back on? You know what I'm saying? So that's where my stash would come in. But I do think that's too much of a commitment before you get married.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that?
I would say, yeah, you can't do either of those. Well, I mean, you could do whatever you want, but I would believe that we definitely wouldn't have gone that route. We definitely planned a wedding and we were looking for a house at the same time, which was very stressful. So no one should do that. Yeah.
And so, Brandon, actually, I remember you saying earlier that you kind of handle the finances in your relationship. How did you guys like come to decide who handles the money?
So we were just splitting up like what things need to be done in the house. I'm great at math. I love math, and she took care of some responsibilities, and I said, all right, well, I'll choose this and I'll choose this. So that just happened to be one of the things. She's perfectly capable of doing it. She was just like, okay, and let it be done.
I also think we discussed that during pre-engagement counseling too.
So I'm going to throw that question out to everyone. And also, before you guys answer, just throwing it out there once again, we're going to be starting our overflow at about 5:45, so in about 15 minutes. So please, if you want to join, email us at 2flowpresents@gmail.com, or we'll have the link in the chat for you guys to join the conversation. All right, so throwing it back to our convo, how do you guys decide who handles the money?
Interestingly enough, when we first got married, because I was the saver and Thaddeus was the spender, I was managing the money. But once we kind of like, I don't know, did the Dave Ramsey stuff and whatever, we started having budget meetings monthly, and all of a sudden, Thaddeus became the main money manager, and I was like feeling like a free spirit. I could kind of sit back and let this thing happen. And so now he's more of the money manager. When we sit down, we still talk together, we still decide where the money's going or whatever, but like he's the one looking, when a check comes in, he's allotting it to wherever it needs to go so that everything works out.
And that doesn't take away from her. She has more than enough capability to do it on her own herself. If she wants to do whatever with the money, it's all there. It all can be seen. It's not like I have a separate Excel sheet on the C drive and no one's gonna know where it's at. Like she knows where everything's at and what the passwords are and what money goes where and how much. So it's both of our responsibility at the end of the day. It's not like, oh, you messed up for not making sure that we had enough money for this month in this certain item. No, it's our responsibility. If we didn't look out for it, then that's on us. It's not on the individual.
And also, side note, interestingly enough, Tyre's become more of a spender, and because I've been around him, I've become more of like a free spirit in spending.
Saver.
Saver, and I've become more of a free spirit in spending. Kind of like what Ashwati was talking about earlier, how she kind of changed a little bit too. So.
Switch roles there. Okay. I want to be like you guys. I want to spend somebody's money. So as we're wrapping up, I kind of just want you guys to share with the viewers what financial resources you guys are using to educate yourselves, whether that's individually or as a married couple.
I would say I've opened up 2 savings accounts and I've done it through the bank. So periodically I would read, one, I look at the location where I am and what banks are available and what services they provide. So I would read information on websites. My mother, I'm not trying to promote anything here. She works for a financial company. So sometimes a lot of it comes from her. She'll give me advice, but at the end of the day, I'm always reading, and I listen to my sister. We always listen to, just random articles and just read things. And we are like, okay, this might seem what's good for us. So what's good for you may not be good for me, but figure out what's good for you and how you want your money to work for you, 5 years or 10 years down the line. Definitely look at the banks and look into savings accounts and, see how real estate can help you, see how you can invest, read as much as possible to educate yourself. But banks and then financial services would be a good place to start for financial resources.
Thank you for that. What else? Tosin, I know that you love to give out some, financial advice. So what can you give to our viewers to help them along?
Yeah, I would say the first thing, and I think Deidre said it. So like, I think whatever works for you. Like, I know people that are readers. Some people listen to podcasts. Like for me, I'm by nature a podcast listener. Like if you send me like a lot of podcasts on personal finance, I'll listen to them. Like I used to have a bad commute, so I could easily listen to podcasts in an hour commute, and I could listen to many. Like um, it's almost like a hobby, really. I would say listening to podcasts for me has been the biggest thing. Like um, one podcast called Choose FI talks about the FIRE movement for those that are financially independent and those that want to be financially independent and retire early, or they're either on that path or they already are. Another one that's empowerful for me is the Black Entrepreneur Blueprint. It's hosted by a man named by Jay Jones. Like he had a podcast early on that kind of just set my mind off and made me motivated to starting a business. Bigger Pockets is the greatest on real estate. Um, there's a lot. There's a lot. I think the good thing about podcasts that I like is you can listen to one and someone will have a guest on, and you listen to that guest, and that guest might have a story that's so compelling. And if they have a podcast, you go to their podcast. And I'll say that's kind of how I just started to listen to so many of them. So I recommend those podcasts, books. I think there's a lot of different books you can read. I think just the activity of reading is important. So I like books like Rich Dad Poor Dad. I could think of a lot of others, but that was the one that impacted me. I think Dave Ramsey's book is powerful. I've read that in book clubs before too. So I think it just depends. I think the more you continuously search and read, the better you'll get. And then at the end of the day, you have to find a way to change your habits. If you have habits that aren't the best. So whatever's going to get you to change your habits, if it's listening to the same thing 25 times, if it's messing up here and there, whatever's going to make you change your habits is what you need to do. Because you can take in all the information, but if you're not changing your habits, it doesn't really mean anything. So
That's a great point. And just so YouTube family and Facebook family know, we're going to be gathering these resources to disseminate to you guys so that we can all grow in our financial knowledge. So, what about the married couples? Are there any things that you have used as a couple to grow financially that you can share with us?
For us, I would say like anytime I have a question or like something that I don't know about, I just Google it. So there's tons of information online. And then, you know, I try to stick with like reputable websites, and I just kind of learned that way. Like recently, we've been looking into refinancing our home to save money. So, you know, you could just contact somebody or your company and try to refinance, but are you doing it the most effective way? You know, we learned that, you know, it would be best to call around several different companies and try to pit them against each other, you know, to get a better rate. But we wouldn't have known that, you know, if we didn't talk to people or even looking up articles online. And also another resource that I use all the time is YouTube. You can use YouTube to learn anything and everything. So I use that a lot too. And then like to just keep track of all of our finances, both his purchases, my purchases, and like whatever comes in and out of our bank account. We have a Mint account. And so you can set up budgets on there. You can literally see every penny that comes in and out. So you can get like alerts if there's like big spending, you know, that kind of thing. So it just keeps you very aware of what's going on with your finances.
I would second Bigger Pockets podcast. They have a Facebook group that you can join. I want to say Rich Dad Poor Dad, even though he said a lot of negative things towards the Black protests that were going on. So he lost my vote on that. Yeah, that support. But you can go on YouTube and find Rich Dad Poor Dad for free. So I want everyone to do that. And it's like a 6-hour listen to. So you could just take 6 hours. It really lit a fuse under me. It gives you a good foundation on financial freedom as far as investments. I think I even got the quote, every dollar is an employee from that. As well as, I believe I studied my father and his tactics as far as writing things down, journaling, budgeting, and things of that nature. And, you know, and I'll also say your network is your net worth. So, get around people who are talking about success, people who own their own business, talk with them, see what you can gain from them. Especially, older people. It's not all about the youth, because the older people, they're willing to teach, but no one's asking, so they're not telling. So yeah, those are a few of the things that we do.
Thank you for that. And then Miriam and Thade, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, so there's quite a few resources that I've looked into over the years since we started. Well, we first started with Dave Ramsey, and he has a class called Financial Peace University, which we've also taught at our church. It really helps you with getting into that budgeting mindset and starting to get into learning how to, pay off your debts. Do we think that always that he's like the end all and be all? No, because there's other things like investing and things that he doesn't really get into quite often. But there are other resources. I listen to His and Her Money, or I watch sometimes His and Her Money on YouTube. It's a Black couple that also talks about finances. I also listen to Choose FI on Spotify. We use every dollar plus for managing our budgets and doing our budget meetings monthly. I also watch a YouTube channel called One Big Happy Life, and that's another Black family. And what else? There's another podcast I listen to called Yo Quiero Dinero.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, this is coming from like another first generation Latina woman, and it's really nice to like hear what she has to say, and also just listen. Like Brandon was saying, like your network is your net worth. It will help you to learn new things, and you can ask questions, see what other people are doing, and it will definitely help you in the long run. So yeah, those are some of the resources I have.
Thank you guys for sharing so much. Like, I never thought about podcasts before. I usually did the reading in the YouTube channels, but the podcasts are good advice. So once again, we want to invite our family over at YouTube and Facebook to join us with the Overflow. I know we've had some questions in the chat that we didn't get to, so we're going to get to those around now. And before that, I also want to say that our group F.L.O.W, we have been selling Black Lives Matter t-shirts. We're going to show you guys a picture of it later on. So we are selling those for $20. And if you are interested, please email us as well if you want one. So now we're going to change it over to our Overflow. Well, thank you guys for joining our Overflow. Lexi, I see you here, and Letitia, did I pronounce your name correctly? So welcome, welcome, welcome. Did you have anything that you wanted to, get us started with in the Overflow?
As far as the conversation?
Yes.
It's really interesting to see different point of view. And I definitely agree with most of the comments here. I'm single, so and I live alone. It's really important whenever you have bills to pay, you need to know how to manage your money. So I'm not frugal, but I'm really, really careful of how I spend. And in the choice of a partner, is also really important to know those details really early. So I agree with the couple that talked about engagement counseling, which is also important. And also all the resources, Dave Ramsey, I follow Dave Ramsey. I actually got out of debt because of Dave Ramsey program. So it's I really agree with everybody on this panel. Really good insight.
Congratulations on being debt free.
Thank you.
We want to welcome our other Overflow members. So I see Roy and Mystique there. Roy's looking real comfortable. And Susan and Rob, and I see Don here as well. And Pierre is going to join us. So Roy and Mystique, I'm curious to know, what was your, I'm going to ask you the same question I had on with the panelists. What was your different, financial inspiration, and how did that change when you guys came together?
So for me, I grew up with my grandparents. So, a generation prior, they have different ideas about money. They both worked, but I don't know that either of them were really savers. My grandmother used to tell us, you pay for what you want in life. It's like she was willing to spend money on little nice luxuries, little treats for herself. But she did have limits. So, there would be something really cute that she would see in the store, and she would look at the price and it's not worth that much. But if it was worth it for her, she would get it. So I came with kind of a mentality like, money is to be spent. It's okay to treat yourself as long as your responsibilities are taken care of. And so that was kind of the mentality that I had coming into the marriage.
Yeah, my mentality was really juvenile. From the time I started making money, I would spend it on whatever it was that I wanted, with absolutely no care for tomorrow. And when I got married, aside from making sure that I had enough to pay the bills, saving really wasn't on my radar. I had like an enforced 401k. That's the only reason why I was saving at all. Otherwise, from that, I came into the marriage with several college credit cards. They gave me t-shirts, they gave me calculators, so I got the credit cards. And it was my wife who actually helped me to get rid of all of those credit cards. And she manages the money to this day. So I'm still the free spirit. She tells me how much I can spend. And I'm just living my blessed life and just, following her instructions, and we're doing okay.
I see you're comfortable, literally and financially. You're just comfortable over there. So Susan and Rob, I see you guys had your hand up. I know Rob is super excited to talk about this.
Yeah, he loves talking about money. I just wanted to say that, oh God. I just wanted to say that like my financial journey began before I got married. I used to be afraid of talking about money, mostly because of my student debt. And I actually, student loan debt was, I had undergrad loans that I needed to pay back, but I was actually in good standing. It was when I went back to grad school that stuff really hit the fan. I had good credit starting out in grad school, graduated, and couldn't find a job. And so you think, yeah, like I'm gonna go get this other degree and it's gonna put me at this certain level. I'm gonna be making money, so I'm not gonna have any issues paying it back, but that was not my case. My credit score plummeted. It went from people telling me that my credit score was impeccable to me just not even wanting to look at my credit report. And it wasn't until I kind of just had enough. I was single and I didn't know whether I was going to get married or not. So I was like, I need to get serious about this because I do want to own a house, regardless of whether I'm married or not. And I do want to be at a place where I'm not afraid of money, where my heart doesn't literally sink when I see a bill or when I have to talk about it. And so I ended up actually doing the Financial Peace University too. And I fell in love with finances because I realized money didn't have to control me. And so I'm still, I still owe money for my student loans, but, I think as Brandon and Usworthy, right? Did I pronounce it right?
Usworthy.
We're talking about, and as Miriam and Thade were talking about, I came up with a plan. And once I had a plan, it relieved all the anxiety that I was feeling about money, because then it was like I had a roadmap to get out of all of this. Then I met Rob, and Rob was sort of how I was pre financial peace. He was scared of money, still kind of is. And, you know, because I had my experiences with money, I was better able to, you know, be in a position to manage finances for us. And so, you know, it definitely has been a learning experience, and I'm still learning. You know, my sister and I, you know, she says that we have these conversations all the time about finances.
So how was that transition to being married and now having to combine those finances for you guys, Susan and Rob? Like, what was that like?
Well, yeah, go ahead.
So I'll say, you gotta know what your strengths are. One of the things that we talked about and watched, we also did what Brandon and Ashwathi did as well, which was pre-engagement counseling. And to this day, the trauma of talking about my finances sticks with me, because we were outside Busboys and Poets on Michigan, and I think it's Monroe. Right out there, it was like a fairly warm day. I had just come out of working at school.
It was that traumatic.
Ratchety kids at my school at the time, and I love them, and it's great. And I talk about my finances. And when I tell you it was the hardest conversations, and I say this all the time as an example, I will talk about the number of sex partners I had pre-marriage in a heartbeat than talk about my finances.
Wow.
That being said, we did have that conversation. And I will say one of the things that impresses me about my wife is her leadership in that area. And I think in relationships, both parties should be humble enough to know when the other person would be the better leader in that area. Doesn't take from my responsibility as a man of the home. When it comes to finances, like money's the devil for me. So the devil can't stay in my pocket. So I got to get rid of him as quickly as possible. That's my thought. And I have decent habits, because I was able to do some things as it relates to finances that will probably shock some people if you think about my overall approaches. But that being said, when it comes to the little things, I wasn't there, man. Like, I know the money ain't going with me when I die, so it's like, let the chips fall when they may. That's not really the best habit, particularly because I love to give back to others. Like, I'll spend money on other people in a heartbeat. And there's also the need as a Christian to, you know, really support and do things ministerially. There we go.
Yeah.
And so these are all important factors that my wife has allowed us. And when I tell you, she's taken us from a place of I didn't know how to look at us now kind of thing. And I'm like, this is dope. So I'll answer two questions that we talked about earlier. I'm for the joint and the separate. Like I tell all the time, I will make it more or not, right? All that money goes into there. You gave me a little bit of mine. I'm happy. I go do about my business, because I think there are responsibilities that need to be taken care of. And if I know my money habits, just give me my coins. So if I'm broke in my personal account, I'm broke. And don't let her smile fool you. If I'm broke, I'm broke. Like, there is no, can I get a little bit more coins from the account? You know what I'm saying? But things is tough. Like, I need to get, money to order food at work. If I'm broke, I'm broke. We may not be broke, but I'm broke. And it's really worked out well for us. So I appreciate that.
And I would say really quickly, just to wrap up, that for me, it didn't matter whether he had debt and meshing our finances together. I just needed to know everything. Once I have all the information, I can come up with a plan. It makes me happy to do something like that.
I'd rather talk about all my sins than talk about debt.
Okay. It's more when I don't have all the information. That's what gives me anxiety. But if we could have debt, but as long as I have a plan, I'm good.
And Rob, thank you for sharing that. I know that you said you like to give money to people. Please do know I am accepting donations at all times. Cash.
I accept too.
So please donate.
I got you. You show me.
But Letitia, I'm curious to know, since you've been on your, financial journey, how does finances play into you thinking about, dating or getting into a serious relationship? Does the person's credit score and their debt matter to you right now, or how do you feel about that?
It does, because it really does, because it's one thing to have debt, but it's another thing to be responsible. So when you talk about marriage, you talk about joining, becoming one. So I don't want to wake up one day and have my husband coming down the street with a new car, and I don't even know how we're going to pay for it. So it's really important for me to know how responsible that person is. So when I look at if I look at the credit score, I'm not even going to focus on the credit score. I'm more of the credit report, because on the credit report, you can see the spending habit. You can tell what type of debt the person has. What if he's more into like investing, or is it dumb debt like I don't know, $1,000 at Macy's or something, or he likes to shop a lot. So it's for me, I would love to have that open conversation even before engaging myself to the person, because I don't want to have all those feelings involved and then realize tomorrow that he's irresponsible. He doesn't know how to spend his money and stuff. I have witnessed couples having issues because one is more of the spender than the other person, and it's not fun to watch. So I'd rather avoid it if it's possible. So like one of the person on the panel said, if we can have that open conversation, I would like to know everything, and how do we plan on paying it back? Because I'm not for debt at all. So I'd rather pay cash than having debt. But I take debt only if it's necessary. So I would like to have someone who has the same mindset. So it's really important for me to have this discussion early.
Thank you for that. And I want to also welcome Alexia, Pierre, and Dawn. Don't want you guys to feel, excluded. Join us in the conversation. Pierre, I know that you have been talking about, you have like books in your background, talking about 1,001 questions to ask before you're married and things like that. I know you also talked about investments, which is something we didn't talk about at all. So I kind of wanted you to kind of start us off in your thoughts with investing with someone that you're married to.
Yeah, sure. So I highly recommend, by the way, that in marriage, we talked about counseling and pre-engagement, premarital counseling, but you need to continue that in marriage, and you need to continue active and intentional. So they say, date your wife. Don't just romantically date your wife. Like intentionally continue to get to know her deeply, know how she's changing, all that other stuff. And that translates into finances. And that translates into the question you asked me, Monique, about investments, because it's important to learn. It's important for both of you to learn enough so that both of you are comfortable with whatever it is that you do. Even if one person is the main investment person, both of you need to learn enough to have that conversation and be able to be transparent. Are you investing in real estate, stocks, whatever it is? And making those decisions. Oftentimes with investments, you have your own 401k, so you have control over that, but you may want to talk about how we do this. One spouse might have their own 401k, might even be the one that has the larger 401k, and is going to buy one random penny stock, and that's probably not a good idea for the both of you guys. So even if you have that individual thing, you want to still talk about that. As far as learning about what are wise investments, continue to learn together and continue to share with each other what you're doing as far as decision making. That's my initial response, but I don't know if there's other.
So I wanted to actually piggyback off that question. If someone has a response to that, you guys can definitely raise your hand and we'll get back to you. But Alexia, I wanted to ask you, if you're dealing with someone who is not as, financially savvy as you, how do you handle that?
Read this book.
Oh my
God. I think most of what everyone is saying is really educating yourself and having the conversation. I think a lot of times, especially people from, the minority culture, we weren't privileged to have certain education growing up. So I think it's already assumed that I think you should already just assume with anybody that you meet, you don't assume that they have the knowledge, right? So you go into the situation on the conversation just wanting to know where the person is. And I think if somebody is willing to learn or I think that's how you can go from there. But I think having the conversation is necessary. I think education is necessary. Introducing people to the different things is necessary. But for me, I approach it from, this is where I am. I don't know everything, but I'm willing to learn about more things. Where are you and how can I how, if you're at a place that is much higher than I am, I'm willing to like hear what you have to say. If it's the opposite, I would hope that the person is willing to hear where I'm coming from. And if somebody's shutting it down, then you just can't go anywhere with that, with the situation. But you would hope that if somebody's open, you share the information and they're willing to listen.
Thanks, Lexi. I saw Pierre, you had your hand up.
Also, somebody mentioned this kind of, but join a group of couples or group of individuals, period, that have that same mindset. Try to find people, and you'd be surprised. If you ask enough people, even if they didn't say it to you, they'd be willing to join that group. You could be that spark and say, hey, I want to get a group of us together on Zoom, or when COVID decides to leave this earth, in person. And let's have you could start it off real simple, a financial book club. Pick a book a month, or pick a book, whatever it is you want to talk about. You could pick articles to share with each other. You could set financial goals, or have somebody come in and speak to you guys, or present, or whatever it is. There's so many different ways, but send a couple text messages tonight to some friends and say, hey, let's start a wealth building group to support each other in learning and building wealth together, and sharing knowledge. And you'd be surprised at what resources you can share. And some people on this, y'all already know, like y'all might even be in the group that I'm in, and how it's definitely helped some people grow in that aspect. So when dealing with a spouse that doesn't understand as much, I think that that's helpful, because they get to see how other couples interact with money. Just like this discussion, they start seeing how other people are discussing things, and how it can be not a burdensome thing, or not an ugly thing as much. It can help relieve some of that anxiety.
Thank you for that, Pierre. Okay, Ashwathi. Oh my gosh, I knew how to pronounce your name and I lost it now. Oh my God, Ashwathi. Okay, I think I was close.
Also piggybacking off of what Pierre was saying, when you do approach your significant other and you feel like they might not be as knowledgeable about finances, or not as good at it as you, I would suggest your approach being very gentle. You don't especially if you're not, even when you're married, you're together, right? But say if you want to spend the rest of your life, or you want a future with this person, you might repel them if your approach is wrong. They might really get offended, because it is really a point of contention for a lot of people. Some people don't want to talk about it. I think it was Rob, so it makes people uncomfortable. So you got to make them feel like, hey, we're a team, we'll figure this out together type of mindset.
I also want to second what Pierre said in regards to texting your friends, seeing if they want to get involved in this wealth building journey with you. I did that about 3 years ago with 6 of my friends. We have dues every month, so we've been paying $100 each a month for the past 3 years. So now we have a nice lump sum of money. And so now we're looking at real estate projects as well as investing. And in the next 10 years, we repeat this process. We can have 6 figures in the bank account after a lot of different flips. So, the time is now. So if you haven't started, please do.
Brandon, you and I got to link up.
We can do that.
We have a question from the YouTube chat. Anyone can answer this, and it says, what if you don't want to take on someone else's debt? What do you do if you want to be with them but you don't want their debt?
Don't be with them.
Right.
Yeah, I actually agree with Alexia on that, because it's kind of like, even if you decide to keep your money separate, the money is still coming into that household, and it's taking away from money within that household to do other things, right? So either way, your household income is going to be affected. So if you don't want to deal with somebody else's money baggage, then you should just be with somebody who don't got money baggage.
Exactly.
I agree with that. And I've often heard people, state that, especially when it comes on to debt that's attached to your credit score, well, it doesn't affect me, it affects their credit score. But your credit score affects how you can move in your life the things that you're able to attain. So like Susan said, if you're not if you don't want to get involved in terms of that, in terms of their debt, you probably shouldn't be considering going any further with them, or going any further into any kind of serious commitment with the person, because it affects, if you're able to buy a car, if you're able to buy a house, investments, it affects so many different things. It affects your children. So I think that it wouldn't be in the best interest of that relationship.
Letitia, I saw that you had your hand up.
Yes. I wanted to add, the Bible talks about being equally yoked. Equally yoked is not only on the sense of a religion and belief. Be financially equally yoked in a time of mindset is really important. It's gonna be a problem eventually in the relationship. You may think, oh, he's gonna pay his debt, I'm gonna be okay. But if you really don't want to take on someone that you don't want to have anything to do with it, I really recommend the person to not get married to that person, because it's gonna bring problems down the road. There's some projects you won't be able to do. You'll be frustrated if the person doesn't even care about it. It's gonna slow you down on so many things. So if that person has a plan to pay it off, that's one thing. But if there is no plan at all, and you don't want to have to deal with it, might as well move on with someone who has the same mindset that you have.
Thank you for that. I think Miriam and Thade had their hand up. After that, we have one more question, and then we're gonna do a 1 minute rapid fire thought to close. Okay, after Pierre, sorry. After Miriam, Thade, and Pierre, then we're gonna do the question and then the wrap up. So go ahead, Miriam and Thade.
I think also in terms of convincing your significant other to be on the same page with you, ask them to sit and dream with you for a minute. Ask them what their aspirations or goals are in the future. And then when they tell you, see if what you're living currently in reality lines up with those goals. Because one thing especially for Thady and I was, we want to go a lot further than our parents could take us as as the people who came here and emigrated here. We wanted to go further than where they took us, and we wanted to also be able to take our children further. So we sat and we dreamed and we thought, okay, what do we want to do? What kind of life do we want to live in the future? And that kind of helped. It's still helping us kind of push us toward the financial goals that we have. One other thing, something that Pierre talks about a lot as well, is that at the end of the day, I'm really excited that we as people of color are speaking about finances in these ways, because I think a lot of times there was always fear around it. And I think us taking charge of our money can really be a powerful force. And I'm so excited to see how us taking charge of our money again will help generations from us, will help our churches, will help our just change people's lives in so many different ways. So yeah, I'm excited.
I'm here. And also I've seen a lot of younger people talking about finances at an earlier age. So I really like that as well. Pierre, go ahead.
That was Miriam Ty, that was beautiful. I almost don't even want to say anything after that. But I just wanted to speak to the fact that I had a ton of debt. My wife had nothing, no debt. When we got married, you can make it work as long as you set a plan before you get married, and you can see that in that person already ahead of time that they are likely to make good on that plan. If you don't see that, that could be very potentially dangerous and could lead to divorce. So you want to really talk through that a lot beforehand. But what Miriam Matari said was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Talk about your goals and your dreams, because at the end of the day, money isn't just for money's sake. It's a means that we use. It's a tool in life. And what life do you want to have with your partner, and figure that out.
So this is the last question for the day. And this one, I guess, is more towards the married couples. It was on the YouTube chat. So I'm just going to read it to you guys. It's asking about with investments. So what about large investments? Do you have to wait until you save it for yourself if you have separate accounts, or do you ask your spouse permission to use the money for investments? So I'm curious on your thoughts on that.
I would say, all right, so what happened was the stock market obviously crashed, as hopefully everyone knows. And the government allowed a rule so that you can go into your 401k, take out a certain percentage, around 80 to 90% or so, and invest that. So we did that. I took out mine, and I needed her permission to see what investments we wanted to do. And she got really involved, and she didn't invest at all, really. She was doing a couple of dollars here and there. So, but now we're dealing with, 5 figures, and then we started dealing with six figures. And so when you get to that level, you definitely need to talk about it, because as quick as you can gain money, you can lose it. So, and you don't want the loss to become a huge problem in your marriage. So it's definitely a lot of communication, a lot of planning, and you all need to be on the same side for every decision.
Yeah, and that was money pulled from our joint account. So, we'd obviously have to talk about that.
Right. Susan, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, and I would say I definitely agree. I agree with the comments that were made just now. And I would also say that even if it were my individual 401k account, I'm going to talk to my husband about it. Because, and we actually had this discussion, very early on about, like, are there going to be some limits to the amount of money that we can spend before we ask permission, quote unquote. So, like, if it's thousands of dollars, I'm not going to spend that type of money. I think we said like over $200, if it gets to be a certain amount of money, we're not going to spend that money without the other person being notified or consulted, because ultimately I don't want anybody, sort of like Ashwati said, and Brandon said, I don't want anybody pinning it on me and being like, you lost all our money, like, nah, we did that, so I think it's very important to have the buy-in of your spouse when it comes to, to making big money moves, financial moves.
Thank you for that. Miriam Tare?
I would agree with what everyone has said. Within our like joint budget that we do, also, this is more, I guess, for smaller investment, or not really investments, but we have our own spending money that he does what he wants to do with that spending money. I do what I want to do with that spending money. It's like $50. We brought it down to $50. It used to be $150, but I don't ask questions. I don't ask questions about that money. I think it's very important that anytime you're making a big investment, that you speak to each other. If I hear that we're gonna have to pay like $1,000 or even more than $200, I pick up the phone, I call my husband, and I let him know, because I think it's really important that we're always on the same page when it comes to things like these. I don't ever want him to find out about something that I've already purchased or already done, without talking to him about it first, because we always need to be on the same page.
Thank you for that. So I want to thank everyone so much for joining us.
Real quick. Sorry, real quick. As far as working with your spouse, especially if you're not on the same page, I put something in my background called the Money Habitudes. That is like a game that you can play with your spouse. It's kind of like a game, so to speak, quote unquote. That will help you look at how your perspective and your mindset on money, and how to handle dealing with your own, the good and bad, as well as dealing with your spouse's good and bad. And it'll give you suggestions on how to adjust and deal with your own, as well as something else. So people that are more have a strong need for security, or they're very spontaneous, they're very carefree with their money, they like to give, like Rob, for example. There's different personalities there. and different attitudes and mindsets, and it gives recommendations on that. So I strongly recommend, checking that out. They have a website, you can order it, whatever it is, or, that will help with figuring things out with your spouse and money. So.
Okay, and then Rob, then we'll wrap up.
Actually, this is more of an announcement. Again, I'm a part of the team, so I want to put out there that if you're interested in buying a F.L.O.W t-shirt, it's not just so that you can have one, which is dope. It's nice. It's a nice little Afro print. It's all designed in-house, but so that we can do outreach ministry. F.L.O.W stands for Fellowship, Love, Outreach, and Worship. And we want to partner with schools during this time, during the COVID season, as families now have to worry about feeding their children while they're home all day. And I know I work in particular in Ward 8, where it's not that easy. So the funds that we get from the F.L.O.W t-shirts goes to supporting our outreach efforts. And so if you're interested, you can email to F.L.O.W Presents. You see a little design up there. That's me rocking the F.L.O.W t-shirt. Typically I'd have it on now. I don't even know where it is. I think it's probably no laundry, but that's something I want to put out there for everyone who has the means and has the opportunity. The shirt is great because you can rock it when you're on our panels, but more importantly, we are a ministry that's about doing things doing things to support our community, and not just our church community or local community, but our community at large. And also, this is an important conversation. So share this with other people. Like, we've had higher numbers, and I want to be transparent to those watching and with us. We thank you for the loyal fans. We've had higher numbers because we talked about relationships and racism, but money, as Miriam alluded to and said, and Pierre talks about often, we need to have these conversations to make sure that, as I see in the relationship with Brandon and Ushwati, is like, so we can talk about what God has done for us, right? We can talk about where we are and where we are going to be, and the things that we're able to do better than the generation before us, and not to put them down, but to say, hey, we've taken what we've learned from you, what we've learned now, to build better, that generational wealth, and really, to me, I want to say God wealth. So I just want to put that announcement out there. If you're interested in a t-shirt, email F.L.O.W Presents. We're taking orders. And then if you're coming down to march with us, also on August 28th, if you feel so moved, you feel safe enough, you can wear your F.L.O.W t-shirts, because I know we'll be out there, I'll be out there, making sure that we are doing more than just talking about stuff, we're being about stuff. So thank you all. Thank you, Monique.
Thank you for that. So I want to thank everyone so much for being a part of our conversation today when we talked about love and money. Please, if you didn't do it already, press the subscribe button, press the like button, and then when you're done, share it with your friends, and then share it with some more friends. So next week's title is going to be on investing in you, your family, and your community. So we're still continuing with finance, and we have one more episode after that where we talk about Black entrepreneurs. So please, please, please stay tuned, and also buy your F.L.O.W t-shirts. Thank you guys for joining us.